good evening, wherever you have joined. This is the second episode of Journey of Entrepreneurs. Before we handing over to Mabel and Pradeep, a quick intro. We have Anuradha Madam from TECHIN, and we have volunteers of Junction Palakad. So why are we doing this session? So Junction Palakad is primarily, the purpose is to help first-time entrepreneurs, founders with an ecosystem so they can thrive. So we are a not-for-profit entity collaborating with IIT Palakad in building entrepreneurs from tier 2, tier 3 cities of India. So that's in summary of what Junction P is all about. And we also conduct interventions helping entrepreneurs in their journey, more like an accelerator kind of a program, small cohorts where we bring mentors into and helping them in understanding the different aspects of startup journey, really from trenches, right? So we are all practitioners. We have been entrepreneurs. We've been working on different corporates. And so our whole objective is to give back and give forward to the community and the society. And that's the same intention of TECHIN. So Anuradha, you want to just say hi and a quick intro of TECHIN?
So, hi everybody. We have Technology Innovation Foundation of IIT Palakad, which is the incubator of IIT Palakad, and we're open to ideas from anywhere in the country. And we're focusing on sanitation, medical technology, probably electric mobility, smart mobility, and few domains in COVID-related issues for now, hoping to expand our domains later. Thank you.
Right. So with that note, and I'm handing over to Pradeep. Pradeep, over to you.
Yeah. Hey, thank you, Prasad and all. Once again, thank you, Mabel, for taking this time on a Sunday evening. Just a quick intro to Mabel, if in case somebody doesn't know her yet. So Mabel is a fintech innovator and serial entrepreneur, and she truly believes that the way SMEs work is going to change forever in a few years. Looking at her prior entrepreneurship, it's truly coming together in open. Believe becoming a unicorn or on the way to be a unicorn, having built a company as around 2 million SMEs in its platform. Believe, correct me, Mabel, I'll be correct, as it's growing, 25 billion dollar worth of processing happening annually, and adding close to 100,000 SMEs a month is a big win. But most importantly, when I was talking to Narayan, my common friend, I didn't see any better example of tenacity and what truly journey of startup is, right? So Mabel, as discussed, we would cover your journey, how it all added up to open. That's down the line, being unplugged conversation for first-time founders and somebody looking at to build as big as open or anything else. But Mabel, pretty known in the industry, won multiple awards in Startup Leader of the Year from Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Disruptor of the Year, truly women leader in fintech at India FinTech, and also won as the FinTech Leader of the Year at Festival of FinTech in 2021 in the Business World, and also the Entrepreneur of the Year at the Indian Achievers Award in 2021. And wishing you many more, Mabel. And as we jump into this candid conversation, we primarily would go through 4 sections, to understand Mabel as the person, the behind the journey, know more about you, your personal journey. I know you've done multiple sessions. We try to make it close to the heart of this audience and the first-time founders in mind, your personal journey. So Mabel, over to you to start with how you started all from your maybe schooling to where do you keep the kick that you won't start your own, and the journey of becoming where you are. So I think more about you to start with, know you more. That's the first section, Mabel.
Thanks, Pradeep. That was a very humbling introduction that you've given me. And I truly hope to live up to all of those things that you have mentioned. and to see to live up to the expectations of people who are listening to this. Well, my journey, I had a very straightforward childhood, born to banker parents, and that was one thing I was very sure in life, that I don't want to be a banker. And think of ironies of life, I'm doing neobanking today. So I was very sure I didn't want to become a banker. My mom was working with IDBI Bank. My dad was with State Bank of India, very traditional parents who spent 40, 42 years of their lives working in a single organization. And, I deal with millennials now who feel that, even after 6 months of working, they want to take a sabbatical. So I sometimes feel, how did my parents even, pull it out working 40 years in a single institution with all dedication and, humility. And yeah, I grew up in Ahmedabad. I'm born and brought up in Ahmedabad. So even though I'm a Malayali, most of my life has been lived outside Kerala. Um, a very normal childhood, the only child of my parents, so pampered quite a bit, but not overboard. And I somewhere was a writer, so I always wanted to be working with the written word. I always thought I would become a translator because I was a linguist, so I loved learning languages. And there's a lot of regional literature that I, used to come across and wanted to get that to the global audience. So that somewhere was something that I was very passionate about. So where did entrepreneurship come in? Well, a hell of a big accident. I landed up, on a content marketing project, I would say, to start with of my college seniors, and then they were working on trying to get financial inclusion in Gujarat. So basically, the rural part of Gujarat, and which is what I got to explore in my journey as part of as an NSS cadet, trying to rebuild Gujarat from the earthquake in 2001. Got to travel with a lot of folks into rural Gujarat and see the rubbles that were there. And for a very long time, I kept looking for a bank branch because my dad was working with State Bank of India, so I thought it was there everywhere. But very early part of my introduction, just before or in the very first year of college, somewhere I got to see that banking was not really there in the grassroots level, and that's something that I wanted to, I always used to question as to why. I mean, why does a bank doesn't have a branch in a place, and how does it all happen? And incidentally, my father was the CGM of a segment of the bank that takes care of, that decides on what size of a branch goes on which side of the, on what, in which geography or which denomination. So somewhere a lot of insights of my conversations with my father told me that they look at there's something called CASA, the current account savings account, and the ratio at which you would get and the potential of the business that you would get on the from a region is how a bank infers as to what size of a branch it has to be deployed, whether it's worth deploying a branch, a 1% branch, or a 2% branch, or it has to be a 10% or a 50% branch. So a lot of those insights were there, and then I got in my final year involved with my college seniors on a project where we wanted to deploy micro ATMs at Kirana stores, and that kind of fit into what I was thinking about, that why can't a bank put up a branch in every nook and corner if that's what their main business is. So somewhere I got more and more involved. I started taking out, their ideas, and I started putting it out with the bankers. And then they were like, "Listen, you're doing banking alliances literally for us. So why don't you come on board as a founder, and might as well do it. I can't pay you salaries, but you're definitely doing as much work on this as we are doing." So that's the start of my entrepreneurship journey. Somewhere we managed to get a couple of cooperative banks to agree to a pilot, and from there on, we've been trying to work on technology, and that was always a challenge for me. Somewhere down the line, both my co-founders were Gujarati business families, girls coming from Gujarati business families. So obviously, by the time they are 23, 24, they were married and sent off to different parts. And I was left with the, pilot that I had to be deployed across, 5 regions of Gujarat and Kirana stores, and with royally no clue on how to go about building this entire thing, because I definitely am not a technocrat. So I kept looking for whatever I could do next, and incidentally, around the same time, I read in New York Times an article about a startup from Kerala that was trying to solve similar problems, retail point payment problems, using a very innovative technology that would just work with using any normal, feature phone that was there. And a lot of these, things were that I was working on. I was looking at trying to do biometric payments and, deploying biometric ATM machines, or, micro ATMs, the coin box size machines at retail outlets. And those were really complex. And here comes a startup doing something, the end use case was the same. The merchant and the kirana store where all the transaction can happen and payments can happen, and without having to pay the pain to build all the kind of technology that was happening. So I was trying to reach out to the founder. LinkedIn in those days was a very paid tool. So whatever I'm saying is like 15 years back. So LinkedIn is a paid tool, and to reach out to someone, you need to be a subscribed user. I definitely didn't have the money to pay the subscription. So I found the same guy on Orkut, and reached out to him, and told that, listen, this is what I'm trying to build. I'm struggling big time with technology. Can I white label what you're doing? So he was like, you don't have the technology or the product ready, and you were trying to tell me that you've got 3 banks agreeing to a pilot with you in 5 regions of Gujarat. How the hell did you get that going? So that conversation went on, and the person whom I am speaking about landed up becoming my husband much later, and co-founder at Open, Anisha Chutin. So that's how we met, and that's how the journey of entrepreneurship continued. I joined in Anish with his startup idea. So I moved from Ahmedabad to Bangalore. Anish moved from Kerala to Bangalore. Why Bangalore? There were actually 2 places we were actually trying to zoom into. One was either B, where the banks are, which is Mumbai, or B, where there is cheaper technology resources available, and which also had a startup ecosystem of its own, and that was Bangalore. So be where the investors are, be where where you can find resources to build a team, and somehow Bangalore served at that point of time. It had a ecosystem of its own. It had a bunch of folks whom we could reach out to for advice, for mentorship, and that's how we came to Bangalore, and we've done multiple other startups together after that. The startup that I joined, Anish, in, that was acquired by a Latin American company. Thereon, we did something with NFC payments in India, and this was in 2009, so way too early. And definitely, that was the recipe for the biggest failure in our lives. That taught us a lot of things. Maybe I'll mention it a little later, but failure really teaches you and really humbles you down, and then thereon you picking up again and starting again, because the bug will definitely keep biting you. So we built a payment gateway after that together, and that was acquired by another one of the second largest payment gateways in India at that point, Citrus Pay, and yeah, and thereon we were working with Citrus Pay for 2.5 years before starting on the journey of building Open. This was also like 5 years back, 2017. So this year is going to be 5 years of doing Open, and Open so far has been my most successful stint. And we are today a 500 member team. Most of us are in Bangalore, but we have teams in Kerala. We've got teams in Mumbai, Delhi, Kolkata, Hyderabad, Pune, And yeah, that here we are at the journey
Oh,
of.
yeah, thanks for sharing that, Mabel. That really helps to connect somebody starting, right? It's not Open was born overnight, but the ups and downs of the startup. Tell us about Open. If somebody just simply connects, right? I understand that you started from payment and then would say both forward and backward integration, if I say so, right? Like somebody said, ATM flattened the bank for a cash transaction because you don't care about their balance. Like, similarly, for the SMEs, like you said, how difficult is there to reach the branch? So how is in summary about Open breaking those problems and solutions, and how was the Open's journey when you started, and what was the moment when you really knew that it's a scalable one, right? Since your earlier experience had geographical constraints as well as others. So something about Open for the wider audience. Yep.
Sure, would love to do that. So Open came from a lot of insights that we've had before in our work before. One thing we were sure is something we want to solve that's a problem today, because everything we did previously was ahead of its time, too soon. Even Switch, which was a payment gateway at that point, was probably 6 or 9 months ahead of its time. So this time we were sure that we wanted to solve something that is real and that's actual. Now, one of the problems I used to face when I was doing my earlier startup, which was a payment gateway, I had a lot of merchants that, and mainly startups who used to use us, and every single person would want the settlement from the payment gateway to go to them before 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock, because they would have forward payments to do. And settling each of these transactions was a pain, because somehow the bank doesn't see me as a even though I go and tell the bank that I'm a startup, they just see me as someone, no one, non-existent till I'm I've already raised funds, or till I have 20, 30 employees. That's a point where bankers become interested in you as a startup, because, and I can't blame them for it, because there are so many companies around, so they also need to pick and choose where they're putting their bigger bets, or where they're putting their solutions on. So in hindsight, I wouldn't blame them, but at the same time, doing each of these settlements was a pain, because I have to initiate every single transaction manually, and to settle like 50, 60 manual transactions every single day, it ends up taking 4 hours of your day, where you have to do sales, you have to do marketing, you need to do product development, all in parallel. And that was too operational heavy, and I kept thinking that probably this is the problem that only I am facing. Secondly, I'm not the finance person, so I always used to wonder how people do finance and accounting and all of these things. How do they get their things properly in order all the time? Because that's the basic that's required for raising funds. You need to have your financials in place. Tried using a couple of softwares on my own, QuickBooks or Zoho or what, but it was all meant for someone who already knew finance. What is there for a dummy like me who doesn't know finance, or who never learned accounting? I'm a literature student. I didn't go and trained to do this. So that was a constant struggle, and I always thought it was a personal struggle till in during my stint at Citrus Pay, I got to interact with a lot of other startup founders through networking sessions that I used to organize, similar talks, offline talks that I used to do over the weekend. And I realized that, listen, this was not a problem just for me. Every other startup entrepreneur I'm facing also faces this kind of a problem, that, that they are all struggling to do their accounting properly, because, you're just trying to track payments, UTR numbers, all of that. Citrus Pay was later acquired by a larger payment gateway called PayU, the market leader. And PayU had not just startups using the payment gateway, but also a lot of these hotels, car rental companies, offline, the SME audience, as you would call it, small and medium businesses, who used to use. And interacting with a lot of them, I figured out that listen, not just us who are in the startup world who are struggling with this, but even the ones who actually have accountants also feel the pinch of tracking, reconciling everything, because somehow, sadly, the bank account and the accounting system don't really talk to each other, because they're completely disjoint, right? So if I have to change that, and I saw that it was a large enough problem for a large enough segment, and a problem that already existed. So if I have to go about changing that, there are a couple of ways I can do it. There are, companies, very good companies like Zoho and, QuickBooks, who have gone ahead and solved it through the accounting side. But what if I have to do it for people like me? And I realize that the bank account is where the money is ultimately coming in. Whether, no matter what tool I use, it's ultimately the account to which all the money comes in, all the money goes out. So if I can make that bank account smart, probably that's where, I can start solving this problem. And it's very easy to stand up and say that, I'll launch a bank account for businesses. But what about the licensing part of it? Even the Tatas didn't get a banking license. Forget about me getting one. And researching on similar models in other parts of the world, we came across something like, fintechs working in partnership with banks, without a license of their own, but riding on the bank's license, servicing to the bank customers or to other customers through the bank, through the banking channel. And that's what we started exploring in the Indian market. Practically the very first startup to start doing new banking. And thankfully, banks are now in a position to start talking to startups more seriously. So when we started out, there was already a bank fintech relationship, just that, we put it to another framework of things where a bank and a fintech come together to solve these problems, and building a whole bunch of tools that businesses use around the bank account, so that everyone can track their invoice, create their invoice, collect the payment, reconcile that, do the accounting, issue expense cards, get credit cards, get access to loans, and get all of that together and in one single dashboard without having to juggle between different interfaces. So that's the vision on which we started building Open.
Yeah, great. I listen that, you follow, build what people need, right? Than going with, especially in this where you can see the problems right in front of eyes. The next section is primarily about first, your first employee and first customer and first investor. I know you had multiple stint on different startups. So again, this gives a good reference for somebody starting, right? What was it, your experience, what was ups and downs in learnings in doing your first employee to start with? I know now it runs in the family, right? But when it started, how was it? How did you go about acquiring first employees?
So we were a 8-member team that used to, work together, moonlight in our previous jobs, and that for me is a funda that has worked out, because as long as you're sincere there and you have your devices separate for both, and there's no conflict of interest, no harm in moonlighting, right? As long as you're not doing what your employer is doing, there's no conflict of interest, and keep that very, very straight and neat. Don't try to, do things that your organization is trying to do, or don't try to poach things from there, or don't try to do say things. So we had our fundamentals in place, that we are not using the same devices given by our employer. We had our own laptops, we had our own, and the time we spent doing this is after work, not like during work hours. So we got that very, very neatly in order. And yeah, Anish and Ajish are brothers. I am married to Anish, so three of us. And there were three others who have worked with us previously in our previous startup. We used to stay in the same society, so that once we're back home, we can just moonlight till midnight or 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the night, sit and work on our idea, and then hit the bed. So a lot of open and a lot of the ideation process, in all of that, we used to work from practically 8 p.m. or 8 or 9 p.m. from that time to 4 hours that we used to put on a regular basis. And yeah, till we were, I think, 15-member team. We were all people who knew each other, who have worked with each other, who were in the same network, whom from where people joined us. But thereon, I mean, there's only so much that you can get your friends to work for you, right? At some point you need to start hiring. And my very first hire was a girl called Devika Girish, who she heads content for us today. And I found her on AngelList. So I went in and I told her that listen, I'm trying to look for someone who can write different kind of content, and who understands SaaS content. But here's the problem: 15 of us who are already there who already know each other. So would you have a problem in coming and joining us? So she was like, yeah, yeah, no problem. Seems interesting. I kind of resonate with what you're trying to build. I can see where this goes. So I'm willing to give this a try. She had already a offer from another established company, but somehow she took the leap of faith and she joined us 4 years back. And thereon, she still remains with us. And yeah, it's been a wonderful ride. The very first time, I think the very first week that Devika spent with us, she was like, all these people know practically everything about each other. I don't know where to go into a conversation. But slowly, gradually, she got hooked along. She started understanding our jokes. We also tried to put in a lot of effort to get her on board with us. And that's how you go about getting your first employee who's not from your network.
Yeah, no, great. I followed some of your stories, which is published in terms of how open is impacting the society around, the similar spirit goes around. Next on the first customer, I do know that fintechs are not replacing bank. That's your strong statement about partnering with the bank. Banks are necessary, not just banking, right? So how was your first customer approach, and how did that go?
So while we were building our product, so we started in May of 2017, the actual formation of the company and setting up your office, the first office space. We were actually working for free from investor offices because all VC funds have got these fancy offices in Bangalore, and most of them would have a few seats that they can give it out. So till we were 10, we were working out of investor offices for free, and thereon we started working out of co-working spaces. So the very first while the product was under development, the banking partnerships was happening, while we were integrating with the bank APIs, and as we were building the product, I had one person who came in as an intern and then later on stayed on with us, who used to help me do some research on what kind of people we can reach out to. So we would go through Facebook and look at a list of sellers on Facebook, research about sellers on marketplaces, go and find them, find their details. So that's how we kept for at least 3 or 4 months. We started making a launch list of database of audiences whom we would want to give out the project to. Secondly, once we were fairly advanced with our product journey and we were very closer to the launch, we did a little bit of PR. We reached out to media to cover a little bit about us, and from there we started building a waiting list. So that came in, folks. So initially, I think 500 or 1,000 customers were all the folks who had joined the waiting list. And once we started rolling out the product, we started first set of we opened up to the very first 100 that we had curated and got into the waiting list. And then thereon, every day we would add in 10% more folks, see how they are interacting, see very clearly where the bugs are, because definitely not waiting for the most perfect product. If you keep waiting for the most perfect product to be coming out, you would be waiting for a very long time. So build something to a fairly decent level that it doesn't crash and people don't lose trust in you. Put it out into the market. Let people interact with it. Let them come back. Listen to the audience. Listen to them. Capture every feedback that comes your way. Try to put it back into the system. Try to see how fast you can resolve the issues that come in, and try to build a good user experience overall, not just in the interfaces that you see, but also what a user goes through or how they interact with you. So those were some of the learnings, and those were the very initial days of doing open. I remember we cut a cake when we got the first 1,000 users. We cut a cake when we had the first 5,000 users. So that little pat in the back really helps the team, because you're hardly 15, 20 people, and you've got 1,000 users, 2,000 users coming in. So keep those small milestones and keep celebrating that along with your team, because that really helps to keep hustling ahead.
Yeah, great. I see your face glowing with the 2000. Now it's 2 million, I believe, right? Like, yeah. The next one is on first investor. I've heard, surviving from on Tiger Biscuits to, Tiger Global, and we understand every startup has a unique experience, right? How they reach the investor, though we follow certain Y Combinator structures or in anything to pitch, but would love to hear that. How was it? Was there any moment where you had to retrospect or anything from investor point of view? Like I'm sure you will be pitching about when you had a waiting list and others, then that means that your 10x and 100x story is unwinding. So tell us a bit about your investor pitches during those days.
Not just in open, but even from a little before. So, investment was always a struggle for us for a very long time. Even in Cash Next, we struggled a lot. Those were the Tiger Biscuit days
Mm.
where Anish and I used to live on one packet of Biscuit and 1 liter of chai. So, half packet of milk can give you 1 liter of chai. And just keep having that whenever you're hungry during the day. And this was for straight 9 months. So we used to save out all the coins that we used to get from the bus trips for meetings. And, whenever there is a, 200 rupees together, go out and eat some sambar rice or something from a local hotel. So that those, small 100 rupees, 200 rupees used to mean a lot for both of us, because that's when you eat rice. You're Malayalis, you're grown up eating rice, and when you're not eating rice, it leads to a frustration over a period of time. But all of that gets solved with that just one plate of sambar rice. Or Anish is a non-vegetarian, so he would have a little bit more, maybe an omelette or something else along with it. So yeah, from that time onwards, talking to investors, reaching out to every single person you could reach out to using LinkedIn or through other networks or in networking events, trying to go and meet people. Those are some hacks that kept us going. Um, with open was not so much of a struggle, because when we started, we already started with a check from our very first investors, Amrish Rao and Jitendra Gupta, who were the founders of Citrus Space. So they were our ex-bosses. They've seen our style. They have seen us before they acquired our startup, and they knew how we work. They've seen our journeys within Citrus Pay and the kind of milestones that we have achieved for the company. So it was a slightly easier bet for them to take at that point of time. But yeah, it was a huge leap of faith, because they were investing into something that was not known in the Indian market. Like, neo banking, no one knew. But great visionaries on the fintech side, and they used to help us out a lot with their network of investors to reach out to by putting out a word about us. Also, a lot of things about branding and PR are things that I learned from Amrish himself, because those are things that as entrepreneurs we keep shying away from. We'll be like, "Arey, nahi, abhi nahi karte. Maybe let's grow a little bit more, and then we will put out the word." Or how can I just go and get it in the newspaper? What will the journalist think? Can I just write to them and get featured? Is it that simple? I often see a lot of entrepreneurs shying away from coming out in the media. But unless you're out there, people won't discover you. And some of the best marketing hacks is because if you get featured on a Times of India or an Economic Times, those sites on Google search give you the highest SEO. So if you have a backlink from there, it will help you down in marketing for a very long time. Even one single backlink will help you down there. So don't shy away from speaking about yourself. And in Hindi, there's a saying, बहनों को सुनाने के लिए ढिंडोरा पीटना पड़ता है. So you have to do some bit of beating the band, and saying that, hey, listen, suno suno suno, मैं ये कर रहा हूँ. So that's something that you have to do. Thankfully, journalists are people like us. They understand you, and if there's a startup founder who directly writes to them and say that, listen, I've built something. I feel this is useful, and this is what I'm building, and one story from you would help me, get some visibility with investors. They are kind enough to support us, and so always don't shy away from it. Reach out to your journalist on your network. be it through LinkedIn, or most of them have their email IDs published on their, under their articles on different media. So reach out to them as much as possible, and that's a big tip that I give to startup founders, because unless there is someone else speaking, having someone else speak about what you're doing is a big credibility check on various angles, not just for your customers, but later even for your investors as well.
Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing that. We will cover a couple of sections. Meantime, Prasad, hope you're coordinating any Q&A from the live audience. The next one we cover is like your start, stop, continue practices. I'm sure you're looking at, adding more to open and beyond, but from an team point of view and the organization point of view, I'm sure you're on top of this. So could you share some of the practices that you follow, what you start, stop, and continue?
Right. So when we started Open, as I told, we were a team of friends. So it's very easy to, do a lot of MCBC around and, use a lot of language because you're just friends, right? And no one is going to feel bad कि Mabel ने shout कर लिया, because it's okay. And at that point of time, but later on, as you're building this into an organization, when you grow from a, from a team to a company, I would say, at that point of time, people, especially folks who don't already know you, become very, very sensitive to the fact that, you are shouting on the floor, or, there's a lot of gali galoch happening and all of that. So you need to be very, very cautious as to, because those are also the folks who are going to stay in your journey and take your, culture forward. So at some point we agreed that, okay, no more, this behavior won't work, and we need to tone ourselves down into, how we behave when we are in office. So somewhere that was, a very early, awakening call for us, and we decided to put a stop to, absolutely no shouting on the floor kind of a policy. So that was primarily the very first things that we changed. Thereon, there were, the very first 15, 20 people ended up becoming Malayalis. So there's a lot of Malayalam being used in the office. Anyone who is a non-Malayali coming in, for us, it was first an intern, and then later on other team members, they become very conscious that, oh, are these people bitching about us, or are they telling some secret? So not using our mother tongue in office was another policy for us. Try to stick to English and Hindi as much as possible, and try to be inclusive. So it requires a lot of effort for Malayalis to not talk Malayalam, because especially if you're friends and if you're already talking to them in Malayalam for a very long time, you just can't undo that. So, but put in effort and try to restrict the kind of language you're using in office hours at least, right? So that was a big learning for us. Third, building the culture of open. Now this is something that, many folks talk about, and even the folks who leave us and go, they say that, once I'm an opener, and we all call ourselves as openers. So once an opener, always an opener. So I strongly believe that folks who come into open should feel at home. Definitely, there is a family bond that ties everyone together, but setting out the culture values that you want as an organization at a very early point of time, defining what your, startup values are going to be, or what your company values are going to be, and ensuring that every single person who joins you knows about these things and they're conscious about it. That is something that is, that, and that at scale, like, you can do it as founders for a very long time, but beyond 150 employees, it becomes really a challenge. And then, to have it structured into your, onboarding process of an employee life cycle management, when you talk about, HR policies coming in, and, things that every single person has to go through, the kind of experience that you give to a person from the time they are interviewed to the time they join, or the very first day of in an opener's life. There's a lot of thought that we have put into, creating these things. um, to the point that, if someone has interviewed with us, done an assignment, but we have to send a regret note saying that, unfortunately we can't take this forward for X, Y, or Z reason, or without any reason, we even put in an effort to try to appreciate the time the person has done the assignment for or spared thinking about things for to do or in your company by sending them some goodie. It could be something as basic as a pen drive or a power bank or something, but sending something out to even the folks whom you're not joining who are not joining you. So you need to think through a lot of things, and not I wouldn't say that don't sit on day one and start thinking that this is how it is. These are things that would come to you as and when your company grows. I think a lot of learning for us in terms of the cultural aspect of what we want to put forward came in when we went from 30 to 50. That was a very big time for us to define all of that. We went from 50 to 120 before the pandemic, and then by the time the first wave and lockdown and all was done and we were back in office, we were from 150 to 200 already, 120 to 200. So there was 70 people who had never interacted with us or seen us in person, but except on video calls like these, and coming into office, um, and trying to understand our madness in whatever way. So all of that is not possible unless you put method to the madness, unless you put in a lot of effort to build bonding activities, even if it's in the virtual world, and get add to people's lives, because no one will do anything else beyond whatever their work is unless you have changed something in that in that person's life. So be there to connect with that person in one to one, even at scale, at whatever, how much ever you can, because that really is something that people value a lot. Another learning for me in this entire journey of scaling this business is that your employees are always watching you, so be very cautious as to what you're putting out. Even if as a founder you will definitely have your ups and downs and mood swings and all of that, because you on one side would be having an investor who's pulling your hair apart, and there would be another some other issue happening in office which you want to even pull other people's hair apart. But at the same time, everyone is watching you at all times, so put that smiley face on, and keep encouraging others wherever possible, and then trying to give feedback. So there are a lot of aspects to this entire start stop continue process thing. We personally use a lot of different kinds of training activities for even our leadership training. It involves using a lot of art, a lot of music, a lot of theater goes into our workshops. So trying to do things a little differently from other than just showing a PPT with a lot of slides. Try to be different wherever possible, because that changes a little bit of that person in the person while they're doing that activity, and they carry that out and they carry it back to work wherever you do it again. So that really helps. That's something that I wanted to share.
Yeah, great. I didn't realize we have spent 45 minutes. It can go on given your storyline. I will do one thing. I'll do a rapid round, around 10 of them, top of your mind, and then I'll open up for questions so that we can, honor the time. So anything comes on top of your mind, your role model.
I would say my mother, a working woman.
Great. Uh, Startup that you envy.
There are many, I mean, there are so many startups out there who've done a brilliant job. I feel probably Pine Labs, Citrus PayU, all of them are, leaders in the segments that I have operated in. So I keep looking up to them. Globally, maybe, Simple as a brand or Stripe as a brand are the ones that I look up to.
Great. If not working open, what, I know it runs in the family, but, what else you do?
I would have been a writer for sure. So content marketing at some point of time. Marketing is what I'm good at doing. So some part of marketing.
Yeah. The book you're reading now.
I'm not a very avid reader, but I have this book here, Atomic Habits. But one book I would recommend everyone reads is Power of Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy. It's a very powerful book. Try to read that and try to practice it, and you will actually see your life transform.
Great, sure. Yeah. Wish you had it 10 years back.
My team at Open. I wish I had it 10 years back.
Yeah, great. And the wish you would love to have it 10 years down the line.
I would love to see many more of such, encouraging and folks, even with, hanging around with me and having more of them, even 10 years later.
Great. Yeah, I hope that continues. You said it's a family, right? It runs as a family, an extended open family. Are you morning? Did I
Sorry.
miss? I was asking, were you morning or late night?
Both actually, but I'm a morning person.
Okay. Yeah.
Late night
Um,
because Anish, Ajish both are, the owls in the house. So their brain works after 12 o'clock at midnight, and then I have to be there. So both of it.
I remember you telling open also, not just open APIs, but you also say open as SMEs put their board open right in there. So you are open 24/7. Yeah. Getaway place, Gujarat or Kerala?
Tough one. Of late, it's been Kerala, but yeah, I do resonate with the Gujju in me sometimes because khichdi still lands up becoming my comfort food. But khichdi is with mori curry, so I am a fraud every single way.
This is today's time, like work from home or return to sites in office.
Sorry, Pradeep, I couldn't hear it clearly. There was a lag.
Yeah, work from home or return to site of being in office. I know
We are
it's
already
today's.
working from office. We've always been working from office. Unfortunately, not because I'm not conscious of the pandemic, but because we are in a segment where there's a lot of audit compliance and everything happening. So we can't help it. But work from office, definitely. The breed of openers are not people who are comfortable working from home.
Yeah. The last one is like, I definitely love you write an autobiography. What will be the title?
Autobiography, I didn't think about that. Probably my story. I'll just keep it simple.
Yeah. My story. Yeah.
Yep.
Good. I'm done. And I would like to open up Prasad. Maybe we can use the next 10 minutes wisely for some interaction.
Yep. I think either you can type if you don't want to. I wish everyone ask the question directly here, Abel. Or if you do you want to type something, you can also type in the chat. We'll pick that up. Somebody has raised their hands. Anirudh, go for it.
Hi, thank you so much, for your insights. I just had a question about scalability. So you spoke about, having to manually input some of the operations very early on. So at what point did you kind of realize that we need to scale it to a point where, getting 100,000 businesses every month needs to be quite smooth? And what was that process like?
In terms of building scalability from the tech aspect or from the
Yeah, in
operations
terms of just the operations aspect. So, when you started, I'm guessing it wasn't as scalable. I mean, you said that you had to manually input a lot of things. And then from there, when did you decide, okay, this needs to be something where, it's mainly the operations bit.
Right. So, Anirudh, I would say that we always knew that we had to build the tech for tracking things, and so we always had an admin dashboard of sorts. Yeah, earlier first 100, 200, 500 is when you're tracking everything on Excel reports and Excel sheets. But beyond that, any Excel will crash beyond 504 fields. So, you better start have already your tech building for you in terms of, having a operations dashboard of sorts where you'll be able to see things and download the reports and upload the files and things like that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Anyone else has got any questions or any points of view?
Hi, Mabel. I'm Ramesh here.
Ramesh.
I would like to ask about the tier 2 and tier 3 cities resource availability. So have you explored that? I think I understood from your explanation that you're mostly set up in Bangalore. So have you explored tier 2 and tier 3 cities as well?
In terms of resources, not yet completely, because but there is a plan, and there's something that we are working with Kerala government for. In fact, actually yesterday, Pinarayi Vijayan sir had announced that we are working with Kerala Startup Mission to set up a center of excellence for fintech, and as well as a program for training resources for fintech, because the current universities or colleges, the amount of training that they are providing and what is required for a fintech, for any fintech company today, there's a gap, and it takes at least 6 to 8 months for a once you've hired a fresher from placement to join us, and once they've joined, it takes 6 to 8 months for them to become resourceful. And so we are now working with on a program for to roll out along with the Kerala government and the startup mission to train resources to work in fintech. So hopefully to reach out to 15,000 aspirants, job aspirants, who and train them, and not just for working in open, but also in other fintech companies, get them ready to work in other fintech companies on technologies that are commonly used, and not just that, but also a fintech center of excellence that we're setting up. So we've taken up a 10,000 square feet space in Kochi, where we are setting up an accelerator for fintechs, and to be managed by the Kerala Startup Mission, and we are investing around 200 crores over the next 3 years for both of these initiatives.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mabel.
So
Moving on.
Kerala is a market that we definitely want to start with, and then try to see if we can, explore this to other regions. So Zoho has done a brilliant job with that in exploring tier two. There are a lot of companies that have centers in Manipal as well. So it's something that we have known, and just that we wanted to be already at a certain level to start doing these kind of investments in from our side.
Thank you. And sorry, one just quick follow-up question. For small companies who do not have a lot of resources, like in terms of cash, any quick tips on how do they go about training people in the tier 2, tier 3 cities? Especially training is a big challenge to get a skill.
Sorry, Ramesh, I didn't hear your complete question.
Okay. No, I was asking for small companies who do not have like a lot of cash resources. Any suggestions from your side? How do they go about training if they are especially trying to set up in tier 2 or tier 3 cities? Maybe.
See, today a lot of things are available online. So this is where you could partner with EdTech, one of the Coursera's out there, probably to run a specific skills course. There are also a lot of other developer forums like HasGeek, or a bunch of others whom you could explore, and try and help your maybe attending some of these conferences would be helpful for your resources. So it doesn't have to be a costly thing to upskill your team, or even folks who are sitting in tier 2 and tier 3 in the pandemic. If at all it's done something good to this world, it's made everything virtually available. So it doesn't matter even if you're sitting in some small village in Tamil Nadu, you're still able to hear things and learn things from the best folks in the industry.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks, everyone.
Hey, Anuradha, madam, you have raised your hand. Please go for it.
Yeah. Two small questions. What was the toughest part in your journey? And two, I mean, I don't know anything about fintech, so forgive my ignorance. So I'm asking a very basic question. You said you prefer working physically instead of online. So how much of the fintech can be done online?
See, fintech can be done online. That is true, because we are ultimately building a digital banking, interface. The problem is when we're dealing with multiple banks, and we have partnered with 18 banks in India. So there, on the compliance and the audit side, there are a lot of other requirements that are required. Plus, ISO norms need to be followed. We have certain certifications that we need to do. So when you have so many partner banks, the problem is every bank has a compliance cycle that it follows. And once you finish the audit with one bank, there would be another bank waiting for doing the audit. So the same process has to continue. And by the time you finish all of that, and then your own statutory compliances and all of that put together, the entire month has gone by, and the first bank is back again to do the audit again. Right. So because we're working in a highly regulated space where money movement and things are and that too, also our systems hold the funds in the banks and to the tune of 10,500 crores that we account for in our partner banks. So because of that, we can't be completely remote. We are on the cloud. All our systems are on the cloud. So nothing is on premise for us. So yeah, if required, we can be fully remote for some time, but not always at scale. And more, and this is a story for most fintech companies. Unless you're a very small team of 15, 20 people, it's tough to be completely remote. And that was a stage where, you're building things, and, there's a constant development happening. So that was and what was your first question? Sorry about that.
What was the toughest part of your journey?
Yeah, somewhere going completely and planning this, remote movement itself was a tough thing. It was something that was known to us because we have global investors. So, the pandemic started out at some other parts of the world, and they were like, okay, winter is coming, plan, have your business continuity plan in place. How are you going to put things? So a lot of their insights actually helped us prepare to go for 120 team of 120 to be completely remote. There are a lot of systems and processes that you need to put in place. So we were able to implement all of that and experiment with work from home for a week or two, even before the national lockdown happened. So that somewhere was a very big learning because there are too many things that you need to plan for at that time, and that was a very tough call because going completely online to offline to completely online. The other part was also getting these people back into offices was also not a easy task. I've heard all reasons from, I'll come back to office only if prime minister tells me to come back and all of that. So vaccination somewhere helped us because we got everyone vaccinated. And, and then, yeah, things. Now the pandemic doesn't even exist in many places. You go and ask them, where is the pandemic? And they'll be like, we don't no longer look at it. So you get corona, you get well in a week, another 2 3 days you take rest, 12th day you're back in office. So that's what we've seen in Dubai and other markets, and slowly that's what is becoming the norm here in India as well.
Mm.
Yeah, there's
Thank you.
one question to Narayan. Narayan, you want to ask direct, or I saw you in chat. His point was that was there any situation where institutional control like RBI regulation hindered your journey, and how did you overcome it? If there was any?
So, good question, Narayan. So, we've somehow, always seen the regulator as someone who is a very scary thing. But what we have realized in our journey is that our regulator is someone who is, not the old school one. They know every single thing that's happening in fintech or in banking across the world. RBI as a regulator has been very proactive also in that manner, in trying to bring in new innovation, or maybe it cover things like real time payments, IMPS. All of those things were reality, right? We speak about UPI because it's become highly popular now, but even before UPI there was an IMPS which helped instant money transfer between accounts, right? So our regulator is a very proactive regulator who has been watching every single moment that happens across the world. They look at the global landscape, and whatever they are implementing in India, they do speak to every single spoke in the wheel of, so we've been engaging with RBI for various things. We are one of the, first few startups who are also working with RBI on cross-border payments. They've given out a limited sandbox for us to try out, doing cross-border remittances for businesses. And that way we feel they're, the regulator is more on the pro side of things than on the, oh, this cannot happen, and putting out rules side of it.
Thank you. Yeah. Just
Anybody-
talk just time, right? Is there any
Yeah.
other question?
So, can I ask one question? I'm Ashish.
Sure, Ashish.
Yeah. So, ma'am, I have a question like related to scale and getting the VC fund.
Ashish,
maybe
your
I
voice is
represent
breaking.
like one startup like platform, SaaS-based platform. Sorry. I'll just turn off my video and am I audible now?
Yeah, you are.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay. So my question is related to like scale and getting the VC funding. So I represent a startup named Legal XGen, which is a SaaS-based ERP platform. We are close to 1,000 plus users. So we are kind of like with a small team, cash positive, like we are able to break even kind of thing. But now scale is something is a big challenge. So we want to like attract other industries also, and it's a confusion like whether to go for VC funding or grow organically. So that's what is my question. I hope you understand it better.
See, Ashish, there is no right or wrong in it. I mean, you can be someone who's operating at small scale and be cash flow positive. No harm in it. There are lots of businesses who have done it that way, and there's no harm in wanting to scale. So either side of the equation you can be in, and things can be. And you're absolutely right in whichever side you choose to be. If you want to scale fast, take give some equity, take VC funds, and then you'll be able to reach 5x or 10x or whatever you are able to achieve. No harm in wanting to pursue that part. No harm in wanting to just stay where you are and keep because it's a big thing to be cash flow positive, and it's
Right.
not, that's something that is the fine, whatever, what do I call it, the actual testing salt for any business, right? So no harm in being on either side of it. If you wish to scale faster, then yeah, take the VC funding route. Otherwise, no harm in being self-sustained as well.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Maybe Mabel, if you allow, one thing probably I could add from my experience is VC fund is not just a money. It brings so many other things, right? So of course, validation in a bigger setup, their connections, their contacts, their ability to break into some of those which we will not be able to do ourselves, right? So probably money is one part good to have, but there are many other things, soft aspects, which also come along with a VC because they've got a bigger setup.
Yes.
Very true. And, a lot of, apart from the funding and the money that comes in, the investors, especially one of the best investors that I have dealt with was 314 Capital. They continue to invest in Open, and they're there to, from the founder's vision point of view, right? They're a great fund. They believe in the founder's vision. They always come back, check on us as to what do we want before any board meeting or any decision making happens. They always check in on what the founder wants, and then there's a lot of support that they put from their team. So if I want to make a senior, I want to make a senior hire, so they have a team that would go out and search for possible profiles and share to me. If I want some user research to be done, they have a team that would do that, and give me the analysis or segmentation. If I want to build a credit score using the data I want, but I don't know how to crunch that data, they have data geniuses sitting on their side who would do that and give us the insights back. So there's a lot more that a investor brings on board There are the transactional investors. This is something that I would want to say. There are investors of both kinds. There are the transactional investors for whom it is just, अच्छा मैंने पैसे दिए, now I need 10x at some point of time, and I just keep monitoring the growth. And then there are investors who become a part of your journey, who also will roll up roll up their sleeves and get involved in helping you solve some of those challenges as well. So there are investors of both kinds available, and both are great. It's good to have the transactional guys who will just give you the money and let you execute the way you want. It's also good to have the folks who will roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty wherever required. So you can choose what works for you.
Thank you.
Good. So I don't see any further questions in the chat down there. So probably thank you, Mabel. It was really insightful. I'm sure this continuous conversation will happen in some forum, I'm sure. And thanks, Pradeep, of course, in asking right kind of questions and getting many things out from Mabel. And thank you, everyone. It takes some extra effort to coming on a Sunday evening and then attending to these kind of sessions. So you're quite passionate about the space, and we will keep this continuous momentum on what are we trying to do, trying to create more of these opportunity to talk to listen from people like Mabel, and we'll help each other. So that's the whole objective of this particular forum. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.